The scary Peppa Pig episode that never made it to TV. Peppa is lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. The clock reads 3:33 a.m. She's not asleep, just staring. The camera zooms in on her eyes, and you can see a reflection in her pupil, her own face. But it's smiling even though she isn't. "Mummy," Peppa whispers. No answer. She gets up and walks through the house. Each step echoes too loudly, like banging on wood. The picture starts to jitter, like some frames are missing. On the fridge, there's a note. "We're not here. No one is. Just you. Just you. Just you. Just you." Peppa steps outside. Everything is black and white, except Peppa herself, who's still in color. The houses are standing, but the windows are dark. No lights, no sounds. She calls for George. Her voice echoes, but it echoes back too late, like someone else is repeating her. "Where is everyone? Where is everyone? Susie? Susie? Susie, it's me. It's not you." Peppa freezes. That last echo wasn't her voice. She goes to the school. The doors are ajar. On the chalkboard it says, "Lesson today. Forget." The floor is littered with belongings. Susie's bow, Pedro's glasses, Rebecca's party hat, all smeared in blood. Black, sticky, and unnatural. A voice crackles over the speaker above. "Peppa, you weren't supposed to remember. You're supposed to be empty." The screen jitters again. One frame shows Peppa's face, mouth torn open, eyes rolled back. Then back to normal. She returns home. There's a hatch in the floor that wasn't there before. It's open. A staircase leads down into darkness. She grabs a flashlight, but it only lights up her own face. The rest is still pitch black. She hears grunting, but it's not hers, and not George's. She goes down. Below is a house, a perfect mirror of her own, but it's grayscale and dead. The pictures on the wall all show Peppa, with empty white eyes. In every photo, she's alone. Always alone. In the corner, someone is sitting. "Mummy," the figure stands. It's another Peppa, but her skin is ash gray. Her mouth is sewn shut with black thread. She begins to twitch and shake as she walks toward her. The camera stutters. The audio warps. "Leave before you become real," she mumbles, ripping out the thread from her mouth. "He's watching through me." Peppa tries to run, but the staircase is gone. The walls begin to contract inward. A deep synthetic voice speaks. It sounds like Daddy Pig, but robotic. "You were created. Now you are forgotten. You are an echo." Smoke fills the room. The camera drops. Then one last frame appears. Peppa's living room. Everything seems normal.
Peppa Pig. The Tooth Fairy. One morning, Peppa noticed one of her teeth was loose. She showed it to Mummy Pig, who nodded. Nothing unusual, just a baby tooth. It would fall out soon. Peppa was excited. When a tooth falls out, you can place it under your pillow, and in the night, the Tooth Fairy comes. All day, Peppa played with the tooth, wiggling it back and forth. By evening, it finally came out. She wrapped it gently in tissue, placed it under her pillow, and went to bed smiling. The night was quiet at first. In the middle of the night, Peppa woke up. Her room was dark, but not completely. In the corner, a strange glow shimmered, not yellow, not white, a greenish silver light. Something was standing by the door. A figure, tall, too tall, bent over, movements like sliding across the floor. As it came closer, Peppa shut her eyes tight, but even through her eyelids she felt it, something reaching under her pillow. It lasted just a moment, but it felt like she was lying there for hours. When she woke up in the morning, the tooth was gone. Under her pillow was a small, rusty key. The next day, another tooth began to loosen. It fell out without pain, by itself, then another and another. No one seemed to notice. Mummy Pig said it was normal, but other children only lost one tooth. Peppa had already lost 7 in 2 days. Each night under the pillow, a new item appeared: a key, a coin with unreadable numbers, a piece of bone, a shard of mirror scratched in the center. Peppa stopped speaking. She didn't smile anymore. She didn't want to eat. Each night she heard steps, floorboards creaked, cold wind came from the closet, though the window was shut. On the sixth night she woke up and couldn't close her mouth. All her teeth were gone, even the back ones. There was something sitting at the edge of the bed, closer than before. Peppa could see its face now, but it wasn't a face, just skin stretched over something. No eyes, no mouth. On its fingers, a string of teeth tied like beads. The thing leaned forward. Peppa felt the cold and the smell of metal. She tried to scream, but no sound came. In the morning, the bed was empty. Her parents thought Peppa had gone to the garden, but she wasn't there, and not anywhere in the house. On her pillow was a note, scratched into the fabric using enamel. "Thank you."
The ominous smell. One day, Mama Pig found an old recipe in her grandmother's cookbook. It was a special dish no one in her family had ever heard of. The book claimed that it would bring extraordinary taste sensations, so Mama Pig decided to cook it for dinner. When she pulled the dish out of the oven, it gave off a strange, almost sweet smell. Although Peppa and George immediately felt something was off, they thought it was just some unusual spices. Mama Pig was confident that she had done everything right, so despite their doubts, the whole family decided to try the dish. But as soon as they took their first bite, something began to happen. It started with a slight headache, and then strange things began to occur in the house. The first oddity. A strange, low sound echoed in the hallway, like a distant, distorted laugh. It grew louder whenever Peppa tried to pass, but disappeared when she turned around. The second oddity. All the furniture in the house began to shift slightly, as if someone was moving it, but no one was touching it. Tables and chairs moved across the room, creating a terrible feeling that the house was alive. The third oddity. The walls began to seem liquid. Peppa and George noticed that their reflections in the mirrors began moving independently of them. The walls grew darker, and strange shadows appeared on the floor. Mama Pig became more and more nervous because she couldn't understand what was happening. In panic, she returned to the recipe, but she noticed something strange in the book, symbols she hadn't seen before. When she tried to read them aloud, the room suddenly plunged into complete darkness. Peppa and George could no longer find their parents. The house was silent. When they finally found their parents, they were completely still, their eyes closed, and their faces frozen in fear. Suddenly, they heard a strange whisper. "You cannot return. This house is now ours." As soon as those words were spoken, the family was trapped. The house seemed to swallow them, growing darker and more ominous, and the doors and windows slammed shut. Peppa and George couldn't escape, and their parents' cries vanished as if they were consumed by the darkness. The next morning, the neighboring animals noticed that the pig family's house had been abandoned, and a strange light was coming through the windows. No one knew what happened to them, but everyone felt something was wrong with that house now. The dollhouse one morning, as the sun peeked through the window, Peppa opened her eyes and immediately noticed something new in her room. In the corner, where nothing had been before, now stood a dollhouse. It was large, nearly half her height, with neatly carved windows, tiny doors, and a little roof. But the strangest thing wasn't its sudden appearance. The dollhouse was an exact replica of their home. Every detail was in place. A miniature sofa in the living room, a tiny table in the kitchen, even 2 small beds in the bedroom. But what really caught Peppa's attention were the dolls. Inside stood small figurines that looked just like her family. Mummy Pig stood in the kitchen next to a tiny teapot. Daddy Pig sat in a chair in front of a tiny television. In the bedroom, 2 figurines lay in bed. One looked exactly like George, and the other looked exactly like her. Peppa hesitantly ran a finger over the face of her tiny double. It was smooth, cold, and lacked the softness of a normal toy. The doll's eyes were black, empty. Something about its gaze made Peppa uneasy. All day, she kept coming back to check on the dollhouse, watching for any changes. She moved the dolls around, placing them in different spots, but each time she looked away, it seemed like they returned to their original positions. Night fell. Before going to bed, Peppa glanced at the dollhouse one last time. Everything was in place. She pulled her blanket over herself and closed her eyes. Then she heard a soft click, like the sound of a tiny door opening. Peppa sat up suddenly. The room was dark, but the moonlight was enough to illuminate the corners. She looked at the dollhouse. Her heart skipped a beat. The figurine that had been lying in bed earlier was now standing at the door of the tiny bedroom. Peppa couldn't look away. A chill ran down her spine. The doll was moving. Slowly, its head began to turn. Peppa's breath caught in her throat. She clutched the blanket tightly, wanting to look away, but she couldn't. The doll's eyes were empty. Then, a quiet creak echoed through the room. Not from the dollhouse, from the real door of her bedroom. She turned her head slowly. The door was open. The hallway was dark, and in the doorway stood a figure. Peppa felt her entire body freeze. The figure stepped forward. Moonlight revealed its face. It was her, but not exactly. The eyes of the other Peppa were black, empty, like the doll's. It smiled. Peppa wanted to scream, but she couldn't. The next morning, the only thing left in the room was a single dollhouse, and inside it, a small figurine. It looked exactly like Peppa, but now its eyes were black too.